To introduce to you Mr. Zach Galligan. So, Zach, at some point we are going to have to get a picture of Gizmo over here on Bovo.
Just want to keep Giz safe. Here you go. Here you go, buddy. Hey, everybody. Let's see if this works.
You got to kick on that button.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, Atlanta. My hometown, Atlanta, Georgia. I do, in fact, live here, just in case you didn't know that. There you do.
Zach, good to see you, buddy.
It's nice to see you, too.
It's been quite a while. I think the last time that we saw each other was around 2008. We talked about it earlier.
Harhound, Indianapolis.
Yeah, good times.
That was a good one.
That was the one where Ashley Lawrence and Tom Savini got the big rubber band.
Is that true?
Oh, yes.
I just remember Tom's cracking his bullwhip next to my table, because he's actually incredibly good. He's probably the best person I've ever met in terms of actually being able to handle a real Indiana Jones bullwhip. It's pretty crazy if you haven't seen it. He can do amazing tricks with it next time you see Tom Savini. He's also a little scary with it, so, you know, step back several feet.
Give him that 6 foot distance, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, guys, due to the restrictions and all that, the hotel wants us to, between each panel, disinfect and do a sterilization and all that. So we're only going to have about 30 minutes per panel. So I'm going to cut right to the chase. Zach, is there anything that you'd like to share with us about new projects you've got going on, upcoming interests or hobbies or anything that you're doing currently?
Well, I would be remiss if I did not mention Bad Candy, the horror anthology that I did here in Georgia, in the lovely town of Milledgeville. Myself and Corey Taylor of Slipknot do the wraparound story, and then there's several stories in typical horror anthology fashion. And that movie should allegedly be coming out this year, hopefully. And you know, things do change from time to time. Allegedly around September, according to the lovely producer who I spoke to just a few moments ago. Because she's here and she's from, well, I don't know where she's from, but I think she lives in Conyers, but I'm not 100% sure. Or close to the area, or used to live. So she's a Georgia girl too. So that's coming out. Obviously, my Mountain Dew commercial with Gizmo dropped about 10 days ago. Maybe a little bit longer. Dropped the day after my birthday, actually. And that was incredibly fun. If you haven't seen it, it's on my Instagram page, it's on my Twitter feed, it's the pinned tweet. And it's also on my personal Facebook page. And it was just a tremendous amount of fun to get reunited with this little guy after 31 years and to see what animatronics would be like in the year 2020, since we shot it last July 15th. And the answer to that question, I'll answer my own question, is the animatronics are absolutely jaw-droppingly good. And I mean, it's not surprising that, you know, given 3 decades of technology, that you know, that they're much, much better. And just the process was so smooth and fluid, and you know, they have synchronization of voice and facial muscles, and the puppeteers are so masterful. They've practiced so much, and my guess, one of the reasons why they practice so much is the same company that did the Gizmo and the Mountain Dew commercial also did Baby Grogu in Mandalorian, and there's a slight similarity between the two creatures. So the jump from one to the other is probably not that difficult.
Yeah, no, honestly, now that you mention it, thinking about the mannerisms, you know, OG Gizmo from the original Gremlins and Grogu, mannerisms are kind of similar.
There's a fair amount of similarity between the two critters if you look at them and look at both of the series. So, you know, it's basically, you used to just have Coke, now you have Coke and Pepsi. So you've got 2 great tastes and you can decide which one you like better.
right. So, as a collector of movie memorabilia, during the filming of any of your films, Waxworks, Gremlins, any of the TV shows you've done, anything like that, have you kept any cool, memorabilia pieces?
Well, one of the things you have to realize is that when I did the first Gremlins, you're talking the spring of 1983. So you're talking 38 years ago. And there was no internet and, no personal computers, nothing like eBay, and very, very few auctions for anything having to do with movies. So it really was, the movie auction memorabilia thing years ago, almost 40 years ago. I'm not going to say it was non-existent, but it certainly was not particularly prevalent. And so as a result, let's just say as a 19-year-old young man, I was somewhat careless with some of the items that I came into contact with. So for example, I'll give you two examples. There's a scene in Gremlins where my drawing teacher, who you see momentarily at the bar, played by Chuck Jones, the great animator who created Daffy Duck and Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote, etc. He's giving me a couple of tips before he takes his drink and saunters off. And he was quite nervous shooting the scene, because Joe Dante is a huge cartoon buff, as anyone who's ever seen his movies can attest to, especially Looney Tunes back in action. If that doesn't tell you he's a cartoon buff, I don't know what else would. And so Joe decided that he wanted him to do this small cameo. And so he was nervous, and by that time I kind of settled down and was a little bit more relaxed shooting the movie than I was maybe the first 2 or 3 days, when I was, quite honestly, pretty nervous. And so to calm him down, I just decided to distract him, and I asked him about how he came up with Roadrunner, because Roadrunner was maybe my favorite cartoon up there with Bugs Bunny growing up. And so he started telling me the origin. He took a Hello? Took a cocktail napkin. What is going on here? There's Gremlins in the microphone. Hello? So he took Hello? Is anybody there? So he took a cocktail napkin, and he sketched out incredibly quickly this beautiful, one-of-a-kind Roadrunner cartoon on a cocktail napkin. And he gave it to me. And he goes, "This is Rin." He signed it, Chuck Jones. And I thought to myself, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take it home and frame it and cherish it. And I stuck it in my back pocket and continued shooting for another 8 or 9 hours. And promptly came home exhausted at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, turned on MTV, watched Michael Jackson's Beat It video for the 50th time, took my pants off, got in my comfy pants, and sat down and, unwound after a long day. And within a couple of days, the woman who took care of my little studio apartment that they had gotten for me so that I had somewhere to live out in California, because I was a New Yorker, took my jeans and washed them along with the Chuck Jones one-of-a-kind cocktail napkin in the back pocket. So yeah, so there goes that. And then of course there was the even worse thing, which was I was obsessed with playing video games in 1983. When I was 19, I would play all the Williams games, like Williams Defender, Pac-Man, Robotron 2084. If you remember video games, that's what I loved. The big stand-up arcade games. So Gizmo would break a lot, all the time. The technology on the first one was like, it's a miracle we managed to do, or like I had anything to do with it. It's a miracle that Chris Wallace managed to do what he managed to do with Gizmo, because the technology just wasn't there. He essentially had to kind of make it up out of whole cloth. So Gizmo would break all the time. You'd be like, doing a scene with him, and suddenly he'd go bang, and it's just a big cog would spring out of his ear, and it would just fall apart. And you'd be like, and then Chris would come over, and he'd go like, "Oh dear, oh my, oh dear." And then Joe Dante would be sitting there with his cup of Coca-Cola, going, "How long is it going to be, Willis? How long is it going to be? What do we need? Tell me what we need. What are we looking at here?" And Willis would be like, "Oh dear, oh my, I don't know, like 6 hours? So you go 6 hours, and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You're like, maybe, I'm like, can I go home? And I'm like, we might get a shot at 7 before we break. So I have 6 hours. So I'm 19. What do? Walk about 2 or 3 minutes to Spielberg's office where he has stand-up video games in his office, along with the Rosebud sled, the E.T. bicycle, just about anything you can think of. Now, Mr. Spielberg was very, very nice, letting me use his office whenever he wanted to, and he gave me carte blanche, especially since he wasn't there. He was in Sri Lanka shooting Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So I would go and I would play games over there all the time, particularly the Millipede machine that he had, which is another great game like Centipede. It was the next generation of Millipede. So I played it so much. They eventually got tired of me leaving the set and going to Spielberg's office. And Corey Feldman would do the same thing, because Corey was, 11. And I would constantly kick Corey's ass at a game called Food Fight, which was another stand-up thing like that. And I just figured out a way to constantly beat him, and I would just do it just to make him insane, because it was fun, and then we were bored, and there was nothing to do, and I just was 19 and felt like tormenting 11-year-olds. So I would beat him at Food Fight all the time, and he would walk away going, "That's so unfair," You gotta remember, we were kids. Long story short, they moved the Millipede machine and the Food Fight machine into stage 17 on Warner Brothers to stop Corey and I from leaving, because there were so many problems. So why am I telling you this story? Because the movie's over now. It ended in August. It's about mid-September. I'm back in Manhattan, 3,000 miles away from Universal Studios. I'm sitting on my couch and I hear, and I go, that's weird. That's the back entrance to my apartment where the freight elevator is. What's that? And I go, and it was a door we rarely used. And I hear knocking on it, and I open it up, and they go, "Are you Zach Galligan?" I'm like, "Yep, that's me." And they're like, "Could you sign here, please?" And I signed. And there was a note in it and said something along the lines of, "Now you don't even have to come to my office, love, Steven." And he had shipped the Millipede machine cross country to my house and delivered it, and it was delivered to my house without warning. So they're like, guys like, "Where do you want it?" I'm like, "The kitchen? I don't know. Where do you put a stand-up Millipede?" So we put it in the kitchen. And the most astonishing thing about it was that my late mother, within a year, destroyed everybody in the family at Millipede. She was phenomenal at it. She was a clinical psychologist, and you wouldn't think she would be good at Millipede. She was devastating. She was like a ringer. You'd be like, "Where'd you get this chick?" "That's my mom." It was unbelievable. She was a phenomenal Millipede player. And eventually I stopped playing it because she kept beating me all the time. And we kept it in our kitchen for years. And then she and my sister eventually moved up to a place in upstate New York in Westchester called Armonk, and they took the Millipede machine with them. Where is the Millipede machine now, you wonder? When you have a video game for too long, eventually there's this one big tube that illuminates the screen that eventually, like a picture tube, wears out. And so at some point, around 1990, the picture tube, we're talking about 6, 7 years later, the picture tube got all dim and you could barely see the little Millipede going like this. So like, what do we do? I don't know. So we called up to ask how much it cost to replace the tube. It was like $600. And we were like, yeah, that's 1990 money. It's like $1,800. We were like, you know what? Just call someone to come and get it. So they had someone come get it and just junk it in the junkyard. So the Spielberg originally owned Millipede machine that he sent me as a Gremlins thank you present, I threw away in 1990. What do you think that bad boy's worth right about now? We try not to think about it all that much and move on with our life and learn from our mistakes. So that's my long-winded answer to your interesting question.
All right, I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you did, your mom was a clinical psychologist.
Was, yes.
How was that growing up, the clinical psychologist?
Well, it really depends on the person. Some people are kind of intrusive in that way, and some people are, leave you alone. And my mom was very much someone who, was, if you'd like to know something and you want to ask me a question, that's fine, but I'm not going to intrude. So she would never analyze me unless I would say something like, Mom, I had a really weird dream last night. And occasionally I would say I had a really weird dream, and she's like, what was it? And I was like, I was on this raft, and there were all these dolphins like jumping around, and you guys were on the shore, and it was all the adults, and what does that mean? And she goes, well, what do you think it means? Like, what does it mean to you? Which is a classic psychologist joke where they turn the question back on you. And I was like, I don't know, maybe that I feel like I'm 14 years old, I'm not quite an adult yet, and I wish I could be like an adult that's on the beach. She's like, that's a good interpretation. So that's kind of like how it went. She wasn't like, oh my God, that's what you dreamed, or what's wrong with you, or, she wasn't like, she was a good psychologist. So I think it really depends on how intrusive or invasive the person becomes in your life with unsolicited advice.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to talk too much of the time. Let's go out to the audience here. Does anybody out here have a question for Zach that they'd like to ask?
Somebody's got to have a question. You've got to.
I mean, if not, I've got a bunch more questions, but I'm going to give you guys the opportunity. Anyone? Right here?
See, I knew somebody had one. Yes, sir.
When you were filming Gremlins 1, and they did the scenes where they had them eating, and it was the people in the giant suits, how did that look in person?
Oh, okay, so the question was, when we did Gremlins 1, and they used the giant gizmo head for the close-ups. See, now, let me just quickly explain this. A lot of people don't realize this. Most of the time, when I would work with the gizmo, you would have a gizmo that was almost exactly this size. But as you can see, his facial, because they're so small, and because his face is so small, it's basically the size of about 2 fingers, it's not particularly as expressive as they wanted. Still, Chris Wallace decided to come up with a way to save time, to change Gizmo's expression from one shot to the next. So, like, for example, a perfect example is the scene where I take him and I'm holding him, or somebody's holding him, and they take the picture. I think I'm holding him, and then he freaks out and leaps over to Hoyt Axton's chest, and then when he turns around, he's going like, ah, he's all scared. So what Chris Wallace did, and the first time he did it, I was absolutely horrified, is he would just go up to Gizmo, and he'd peel Gizmo's face off. His face was peelable. So he had a whole bunch of little Gizmo faces with different expressions. One of them had an upturned smile, another one had a frown, another one had a this and that. And so to save time, he'd be like, okay, in this shot we've got this face, and then I'll just peel the face off and put the scared shot on this one and glue it in, and we wait 5 minutes, and then you do the next shot. So that's how they dealt with that. But eventually, when it came time, and most of you may not know this, but we did Gremlins essentially in 2 parts, and Gremlins 2 in 2 parts. Humans and Gremlins for 4 months, and then Gremlins only puppets for another 4 months. In Gremlins 2, it was another 5 months. I remember visiting the Gremlins 2 set right at the end of the 9-month shoot, and I'd already been gone for 5 months. They've been working for 5 more consecutive months. And when I walked on the set, I was like, hi, how is everybody? They were ready to kill me. They were like, how do you think we are? I was like, a little tired about working with puppets, huh? They're like, yep. They were super frustrated, just everything, even with Rick Baker being as incredible as he was, and it still is, there were still plenty of technical issues. So when it came time to do, for the first movie, Gizmo's facial expressions, they had to use a gigantic head, animatronic head, and they would put a huge pillow behind it too, so like when he has his, he's sitting on the bed with me and he's watching with the 3D glasses and stuff like that, watching the Clark Gable movie, they want to punch in for the close-up of him going, ah, or looking to the side, and there's a shot where he looks to the side and all of the Maguire eating chicken and he's like, ah, and he makes that kind of expression. So the thing was huge. The Gizmo head was like, the head alone was like the size of that screen back there. And they have pictures of it, and when you see it, people get freaked out because the thing's monstrous, and you're so used to seeing him as just a little cute little kitten type thing. And it's just like, he's got the head of a great white shark. and it just looks kind of jarring if you're not used to it. So to answer your question, the short version is, which is impossible with me because I always give you the long version, but the short version is, I wasn't there for any of that. They built those big heads, and when I saw them, I was alarmed too, because it was all done months after I'd left. Which is another reason why I haven't met Howie Mandel, even though he's on the Mountain Dew commercial. Never met Howie Mandel, even for a split second, one day, nothing in my life. And that's because, I would always do the first 4 months, and then he would just do the post-production, and sometimes they're a year apart. So you'd have to be going to the sound stage at the exact same time to run into the person.
Anyone else? How about the back?
Would you like to share any stories about working with Hoyt Axton, and did he ever play or sing any music for you on stage?
Do you know, the question was share memories of Hoyt Axton, who, as some of you may or may not know, was an excellent country singer and a pretty well-known songwriter. What most people don't know is that his mother was a songwriter as well, Mae Axton, and she happened to pen a rather remarkable #1 hit for an unknown young man named Elvis Presley called Heartbreak Hotel. That's right, Hoyt Axton's mom wrote Heartbreak Hotel. How cool was that? And then Hoyt wrote a song for Three Dog Night called Never Been to Spain, and Elvis covered it. So the mother and the son both wrote songs that Elvis covered. That is maybe the most badass piece of music trivia you can ever come across. I was going to say until a few years ago that I never heard Hoyt play anything, but then I recently found my sister sent me some boxes from her attic from the 1980s, and I went through them, and there was just a treasure trove of cool stuff in there. And one of the things that was in there was the original cast party invitation to Gremlins, which I believe was mid-November 1983, right when they finished shooting. And it says, entertainment by Rand Peltzer and his orchestra. And as soon as I read that, I went, oh my gosh, that's right. Hoyt got up on stage at the Equestrian Center in Los Angeles, and he played for about an hour. Some of his songs, and obviously some of the songs that other artists covered, like Three Dog Night. His big hit was Joy to the World. Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog. Was a good friend of mine. Hoyt wrote that. Never Been to Spain, like I mentioned, that's Three Dog Night song too. But I'll tell you, this is the thing I always remember about Hoyt. Hoyt was so cool. He was 70s cool. It was the 80s, but he was still 70s cool. He was hanging out with, like, the thing I always kicked myself about one time is he came up to me one time and he goes, hey Zach, I don't know, are you doing anything this weekend? And I go, and at the time I think I was, Phoebe and I were going to go see like a triple feature or something at Westwood, because Phoebe and I would constantly go see movies all the time. I was like, I think I am. Why? He's like, well, I got a couple of friends coming over to the house. I got this guy named Waylon Jennings coming over, and we're going to be playing some songs and stuff, and if you want to come over and hang out, we'd love to have you over. And I was like, I'm going to take a pass, I'm going to go to Westwood and see something. The idea that, like, it hurts so bad now to think that, like, I could have been at Hoyt's house jamming with Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash and stuff like that, people that he hung out with all the time. Ringo Starr, who he wrote a song for. The thing I remember most about Hoyt is the first day I met him on set. He comes up, he goes, just like his inventor character, he was so much like that inventor character, comes up, he goes, how's that? I'm Hoyt Axton, we're playing your dad, and I got a little thing here. I got a pin. It's a Jeremiah Bullfrog pin. I don't know if you know this, but I wrote Joy to the World. It was the #1 song in 1974 for about 5 weeks, and I can just put this right here on your lapel and pin it there, and then I look real mighty fine there with that Jeremiah Bullfrog pin right there. And so I had that Bullfrog pin probably for about 20, 25 years, but eventually I just moved so many times it ended up in some box somewhere and I can't find it. But I said to him, and this, you have to remember, I've met Hoyt now for 30 minutes. I'm 19 years old. It's 1983. I said, did you say that Joy to the World song is #1 for 5 weeks? He goes, it sure was. And I said, are you the lone writing credit on that? He goes, it was 100% my song. And I said, you must have made a fortune on that song, have a #1 hit in America for 5 weeks. He goes, yep. I said, well, good for you. You got all that money. He goes, nope. I said, you don't have the money? He goes, nope. I go, where did it go? He goes, straight up my nose. And the fact that he would admit that to a 19-year-old kid, I still think that's the most badass thing. That is such an, I'm so happy I can tell that story. And he had it with a big smile on his face. The other thing that he would do that was amazing is he was maybe the least condescending person I have ever met in my entire life. And I'll give you an example. He would always do this. He'd go, so yeah, he wrote this song, by the way, about cocaine called the No No song for Ringo Starr. It's called No 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 No, I don't snort it no more. I'm tired of waking up on the floor. No thank you please, it only makes me sneeze and then it makes it hard to find the door. Anyway, where was I going with this? Suddenly I had 80s flashbacks. He would go this, he'd go, so I'm sitting there and goes, I wrote this song and I turned to Ringo and Zach, do you know Ringo? I'm like, I'm 19. How would I know Ringo Starr? I hobnobbed with the Beatles. That's what I did. I'm 19 years old, I'm at Columbia University, it's my second movie, and I hang out with Ringo Starr all the time. But he was so non-condescending, he would be like, do you know Ringo? Because he thought it was conceivable. I could know him, somehow. Do you know Ringo? I'm like, no, I don't know Ringo. He would continually do that. It's like, I was hanging out with Danny Hutton from Three Dog Night. Do you know Danny's name? No, I do not know any members of Three Dog Night at all. Not Chuck Negron or Corey Wells or Danny Hutton for that matter. And he would constantly do that. He would probably, it was just amazing. He probably would have done that with the President of the United States at the time. He'd be like, I was hanging out with Ronald Reagan. Do you know Reagan? Oh yeah, sure, we played golf together. So he was just, I loved Hoyt. I really did. I loved him. And when he passed away in '99, it's hard to believe it was 20 years ago, it was a gut punch. It was a gut punch. And Phoebe loved him too. Phoebe loved him. Thought he was just the sweetest man, big old burly teddy bear, and a really great songwriter too. So there's a super long answer to your question, but he deserved that answer.
All right, so the Santa Claus story in Gremlins.
Yeah.
Was that part of the original script? Was that ad-libbed in? Where did that
The
go?
Santa Claus story is from the original script, and it was actually given to another character. I don't remember which one. And Phoebe's part, if you looked at the script, was pretty thin. It was basically kind of like, she's the pretty nondescript girl with no character development who works next to me. And so they wanted to give her a little bit more, to attract a better actress, better type of actress. You want to give them something challenging to do, otherwise it's just too easy and slightly insulting to women because they can be more than just another pretty face. They wanted to give the female character some more complexity, so they took that story and slapped it onto Phoebe's character, Kate Berenger. And that made it sort of meatier part. And because the actress who was playing it, you know that she was going to be waiting for that day when she had that monologue, and that was indeed the case with Phoebe. I mean, Phoebe would come up to me literally on an every other day basis and be like, so I came up with this reading for this line, what do you think? And that's when they pulled up, and I was like, and it was always be the chimney monologue. And so I heard the chimney monologue 12 to 15 weeks every other day from Phoebe before we got to it. So, I mean, the idea that you want to talk about someone who had their lines and dialogue down cold, she had that monologue down cold. And the day that we shot it, it was weird. She knew it so well, but now it was like finally after all the preparation, it was time to do it, and she was a little nervous. A little nervous because it's it's go time, And really, think about her role without that monologue. It's really not that amazing, and or without the. And she also did a very, very good job of adding things to scenes that weren't there. One of the things that really impressed me about her was, if you remember the scene with me and her and Judge Reinhold, her Fast Times buddy, in Dory's Tavern, where he says, hey, Kate, you come see my, why haven't you seen my new apartment? She's like, I haven't seen your old apartment, that scene. Phoebe came up with this thing. There's a lot of sawdust on the ground, and she wanted to show in a non-verbal way that she preferred me as a partner, romantic partner, as opposed to Judge Reinhold. And she wanted the audience to know, and women in particular to know, she preferred me as opposed to the sort of douchey alpha male that Judge was supposed to play as Gerald. And so she told Joe what she was going to do, and she kind of told me, but not really. She took a piece of sawdust from the floor, and she put it on my blazer shoulder. And we do the scene. She comes over to serve us drinks, and Judge starts aggressively hitting on her. And she kind of rebuffs him, and he keeps going, hey, come on, come over to my house. I mean, we're talking cable, which actually was a line that I came up with when we were joking around, and Joe was like, that's good, that's great, I like that, give that to Judge, he can say that. So the we're talking cable line was something I was joking around with Judge, like, hey man, new apartment, we're talking cable, so they threw that in there. So when he gets to the we're talking cable, or I haven't seen your old apartment, she reaches over and she takes a little speck of sawdust off my shoulder and throws it on the floor. And I notice her do it, and I look up at her and I give her a little thanks, and she gives me a little thanks too. And that was supposed to be kind of foreshadowing of, hey, don't worry about it, dude. You're the one. We're in a small town and the males are limited here, but you're the guy, not this guy. I would be caught dead with that guy. You're the guy. And it's almost like a chimpanzee grooming you. You're grooming their mate. It's like a very cool, it was very smart kind of, very clever thing that she did. It's non-verbal. You watch the movie again, maybe you don't notice it, but you notice it. If you do notice it, it's cool. And if you don't notice it, you notice it on the subconscious level. And that's the kind of stuff she was coming up with when she was 19. So she was a very smart person, and she really knew how to. That was a moment that wasn't even in the script, and she decided, she knew that she already, after 2 or 3 films, 4 films, she knew how to kind of beef her part up and make it more than what was on paper. And one final thing that I'll say that's really interesting is that in those boxes that I found in my attic, thankfully, since I junked my old millipede machine and threw away washed my Chuck Jones original thing, I did find my original Gremlins shooting script that has all of my notes and crib notes and corrections and stuff like that in it. And I started to read it, and I said, why am I reading it? I've seen this movie, a dozen times. I know it like the back of my hand, and I'm in it. I'm like, why would I read it? And I kept reading it anyway, because I just wanted to see, let's see what the stage directions are like. And when I eventually sort of skimmed, I didn't read the whole thing, but I skimmed through the whole script. And to my astonishment, I found that literally about 50% of the Gremlins movie that you all know and love is pretty much ad-libbed. And about 50% of the dialogue of every scene, and in some scenes, the entire dialogue, is thrown out and replaced by us, Phoebe and myself, and Judge Reinhold, and to a certain extent sometimes Corey Feldman, even at 11, just kind of playing the reality of the scene and keeping the key plot points, but changing the dialogue so that it would fit our kind of speech patterns much better than that. So it is very, very strange to see whole chunks of stuff in the script where you go, I don't remember that. It did not make it at all, and we didn't even shoot it. We shot some other version. And then I could kind of, you're talking 38 years ago, I kind of remember Joe Dante, I would say to Joe, it says here I say X, Y, and Z. Should I say that? Thank you, no. What would you say instead? I don't know, I would say so what have you been doing today? He goes, let's take that, let's do that instead. And let's just see what goes from there when you say that. So, what are you doing today? Oh, this is town. Let's look at some comics, okay? Oh, look, Hooded Menace, that's cool. Yeah, so do that. So just make it more natural and this and that. And then you go and look at the written version, and it's like, 3 of the 14 lines are still there, and 11 lines are essentially ad-libbed by the thespians involved in the film, which just, to me, blew me away, because I don't remember doing 90% of that. But I guess that's how we worked every day, and so it added up.
Well, Zach, thank you very much for your time today, man. It's awesome seeing you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, please do me a favor. Make sure you stop by Zach's table. See him, get some autographs. And, Zach, thank you again.
Don't forget him, too. Can't forget him.
Yeah, don't forget.
The star of the show.
Don't forget to grab you a picture with Gizmo. All right, ladies and
All right,
gentlemen.
thank you, guys.
Put your hands together.